The dust kicked up beneath Olivia Zimmerman's worn boots as she stumbled into Monticello, Utah territory, with nothing but the tattered dress on her back and bruises hidden beneath the fabric. Marks from a husband whose cruelty had finally driven her to flee in the dead of night with only the moon as her witness. It was late spring in 1878, and the small mining town nestled in the San Juan Mountains represented her last desperate hope for survival, though she had little faith left that anywhere could offer her sanctuary from the darkness that seemed to follow her like a shadow. Her hollow eyes scanned the main street as townspeople paused their daily routines to stare at the stranger who looked more ghost than woman. Her auburn hair matted, and her face gaunt from days of traveling with barely any food or water. She collapsed near the horse trough outside the general store, her legs finally giving out after pushing herself beyond all reasonable limits. The wooden planks of the boardwalk felt solid against her knees, a small mercy after so many miles of unforgiving terrain. Her throat burned with thirst, but even reaching for the water dipper felt like too much effort. The world tilted and spun, colors bleeding together as consciousness threatened to slip away entirely. Miss, can you hear me?" The voice broke through the fog in her mind, deep and concerned, carrying an accent that suggested education mixed with years of outdoor living. Strong hands steadied her shoulders, preventing her from pitching forward into the dirt. "When did you last eat something?" Olivia tried to focus on the face before her, squinting against the harsh afternoon sun. She made out kind brown eyes, sun-bronzed skin, and dark hair that curled slightly beneath a well-worn Stetson. The man crouching beside her wore simple cowboy attire, nothing fancy, but clean and well-maintained. Something in his expression made her instinctively recoil despite her desperate need for help. "Please, I do not need anything," she managed to whisper, her voice hoarse and cracking. "I can manage on my own." "You are about 2 minutes from passing out cold," he said matter-of-factly, without judgment in his tone. "I am James Irving, and I have been working the ranch just outside town for the past 5 years. Let me at least get you some water and food before you make any decisions about what you need or do not need." Before Olivia could protest further, he had already dipped the ladle into the trough, using his bandana to wipe it clean first, then offering it to her lips. The water tasted like salvation itself, cool and clean, washing away some of the dust that coated her throat. She drank greedily, too desperately thirsty to maintain her pride, and James patiently refilled the ladle 3 more times before she finally gestured that she had enough. "Thank you," she breathed, hating how those simple words made her feel indebted. In her experience, every kindness came with a price. Every helping hand eventually turned into a fist or demanded payment she could not afford to give. "Can you stand if I help you?" James asked, already positioning himself to support her weight. "The boarding house is just down the street. Mrs. Patterson, who runs it, is tough as nails but fair, and she always has rooms available since most of the miners prefer the saloon upstairs." "I have no money," Olivia admitted, shame coloring her pale cheeks. "I cannot pay for a room or food or anything else." James studied her for a long moment, his gaze taking in the bruises that peeked from beneath her collar, the way she held her left arm protectively against her ribs, the fear that radiated from her despite her attempt at stoic pride. "Then I will cover it until you get back on your feet. No strings attached, no debt owed. Just one human being helping another who clearly needs it. Why would you do that?" The question came out more accusatory than she intended, years of learning that nothing came free making her suspicious of genuine generosity. "Because it is the right thing to do," James said simply, as though that explanation should suffice. "And because I can see in your eyes that you have been running from something terrible, and whatever that something is, you deserve a chance to start fresh without it hanging over you." Tears burned in Olivia's eyes, hot and unwelcome. She could not remember the last time someone had offered her kindness without expecting something in return, without using it as leverage or holding it over her head as proof of her inadequacy. "I do not deserve kindness," she whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I am not worth the trouble or expense." "Now that is just about the saddest thing I have heard all week," James said gently, rising to his feet and extending his hand to help her up. "And I spent Tuesday helping Doc Miller with a miner who lost 3 fingers in a blasting accident, so that is saying something. Come on, miss. Let's get you somewhere safe where you can rest and eat, and then tomorrow you can decide what comes next." Against every instinct that screamed at her to refuse, to maintain her independence no matter the cost, Olivia accepted his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Her legs trembled beneath her, barely able to support her weight, and James wrapped a supportive arm around her waist without hesitation. She flinched at the contact, her body tensing despite recognizing that he meant no harm. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly, pitched low enough that only she could hear. "I promise you that. Take your time and we will move at whatever pace you can manage." They made their way slowly down the dusty street, Olivia leaning heavily on James's solid frame while trying to ignore the curious stares of the townspeople. A woman in a fine dress whispered something to her companion, both of them looking at Olivia with barely concealed disdain. A group of miners outside the assay office watched them pass with speculation in their eyes. She wanted to disappear, to become invisible, to not be the object of scrutiny and judgment. The boarding house stood 2 stories tall, painted white though the color had faded and peeled in places under the harsh mountain sun. A hand-painted sign reading "Patterson's Rooms and Meals" hung above the entrance. James guided her up the 3 steps to the porch, patient as she paused twice to catch her breath and gather her strength. The interior smelled of lye soap and cooking meat, simple but clean. A stern-looking woman in her 50s appeared from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron. Her gray hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her sharp blue eyes missed nothing as she took in Olivia's bedraggled state. "James Irving, what have you brought to my doorstep this time?" Mrs. Patterson's voice held more exasperation than actual annoyance. "Last month it was that stray dog you insisted needed nursing, and the month before that it was the prospector with the broken leg. This is Miss Olivia Zimmerman, and she needs a room and some hot food," James said, not rising to the bait in the older woman's tone. "I will cover her expenses until she can manage on her own." Mrs. Patterson crossed her arms and studied Olivia with the same thoroughness she might examine a bolt of fabric for flaws. "Running from something." "Yes," Olivia admitted, seeing no point in lying to someone who clearly possessed the ability to spot deception from a mile away. "The law, my husband." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened fractionally. "He going to come looking for you here? I do not know," Olivia said honestly. "I hope not. I walked for days and tried to cover my trail, but I cannot be certain." "Well, if he does show up, he will find that the women of Monticello do not take kindly to men who rough up their wives," Mrs. Patterson declared firmly. "I have a room on the 2nd floor, back corner, with a good sturdy lock on the door and a view of the street so you can see anyone approaching. 30 cents a day includes 2 meals and fresh water for washing. That work for you, James?" "That works perfectly, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you." James reached into his pocket and extracted several coins, pressing them into the landlady's weathered palm. "That should cover at least a week. Give or take. I will get you some stew and biscuits while James helps you upstairs, Mrs. Patterson said, her tone warming slightly as she addressed Olivia directly. You look like you have not eaten properly in quite some time, so I will make sure the portions are generous. The outhouse is out back, and there is a wash basin in your room. I will bring up some hot water after you have eaten so you can clean up if you want. Thank you, Olivia managed, overwhelmed by the simple human decency being shown to her. I truly appreciate your kindness. Save your thanks and just focus on getting better, Mrs. Patterson replied, already heading toward the kitchen. You have that look about you that says you have been through hell and back. Take the time you need to heal properly. James led Olivia up the narrow staircase, supporting most of her weight as her legs threatened to give out with each step. The boarding house was simple but well maintained, with clean floors and walls free of the grime that accumulated in some of the rougher establishments in mining towns. The room at the end of the second-floor hallway was small but adequate, containing a narrow bed with a quilt, a washstand with a chipped porcelain basin and pitcher, a small dresser with 3 drawers, and a straight-backed chair positioned near the window. Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed with relief, every muscle in her body screaming with exhaustion. James opened the window slightly, letting in fresh air to chase away the stuffiness of a room that had been closed up. He checked the lock on the door, testing it to ensure it functioned properly, then turned back to her with concern written across his features. I will let you rest now, he said, moving toward the door. Mrs. Patterson will bring your food up shortly. If you need anything at all, just ask her, and she will know how to reach me at the ranch. Wait, Olivia called out, her voice barely above a whisper. James paused with his hand on the doorknob, looking back at her expectantly. She struggled to find the words to express the confused tangle of emotions in her chest. Why are you doing this? You do not know me. I could be anyone, a thief or worse. James considered her question seriously, leaning against the doorframe. About 6 years ago, I was in a bad way myself. Got thrown from a horse during a stampede and broke my leg in 3 places. I was 2 days from the nearest town. No food, no water, and night falling fast. A Ute trapper found me and carried me on his back for miles to get me help. He stayed with me for a week while the doctor set my leg, making sure I did not develop fever or infection. I asked him the same question you just asked me. What did he say? Olivia asked, drawn into the story despite herself. He said that the world gives us 2 choices every single day. We can add to the suffering, or we can work to reduce it. He chose to reduce it whenever possible, because he believed that kindness was not a debt to be repaid but a gift to be passed forward. James smiled slightly, the memory clearly precious to him. So I guess I am passing forward what he gave me. Someday when you are back on your feet, maybe you will do the same for someone else who needs it. Before Olivia could respond, he tipped his hat and slipped out of the room, closing the door gently behind him. She sat in the silence that followed, staring at the worn floorboards and trying to process everything that had happened in the past hour. Part of her waited for the other shoe to drop, for James to return with demands or expectations that would reveal his true motives. But as the minutes ticked by, and Mrs. Patterson appeared with a steaming bowl of beef stew and fresh biscuits, no such demands materialized. The food tasted better than anything Olivia could remember eating in years. She had grown accustomed to scraps and leftovers, to going hungry when her husband decided she had not adequately performed her duties, to eating in fear while watching his moods shift like dangerous weather. Here, alone in this small rented room, she could eat at her own pace without criticism or threat. The simple pleasure of it brought tears to her eyes that dripped into the stew, salt mixing with savory broth. Mrs. Patterson returned an hour later with a bucket of hot water and a worn but clean dress draped over her arm. "This belonged to my daughter before she married and moved to Denver," the older woman said, setting the bucket down near the washstand. "She was about your size, maybe a touch taller. It is not fancy, but it is clean and whole, which is more than can be said for what you are wearing now." "I cannot accept that," Olivia protested weakly, though her eyes lingered on the simple blue calico dress with desperate longing. "You have already done so much. You can and you will, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "I have seen enough women come through this town fleeing bad situations to recognize one when she shows up on my doorstep. You need something clean to wear, and I have something available. It is not charity, it is practical. Now, I will leave you to wash up and change. Put your old dress outside the door, and I will see about cleaning it, though from the look of it, it might be beyond saving." After Mrs. Patterson left, Olivia stripped off the tattered dress that had served her through her desperate flight, wincing as fabric pulled at scabs and healing wounds. The hot water felt like luxury against her skin as she scrubbed away layers of trail dust, dried sweat, and the physical reminder of the violence she had endured. She washed her hair 3 times, working her fingers through the tangles until the auburn strands finally ran clean. The act of cleaning herself felt symbolic somehow, as though she could wash away not just the dirt, but also the shame and pain that had accumulated over the years of her marriage. The borrowed dress fit reasonably well, if a bit loose around the waist where Olivia had lost weight from irregular meals and constant stress. She studied her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. Without the coating of grime, her skin looked pale but clear. The bruises on her face had faded to yellow and green, still visible but healing. Her eyes, however, remained haunted, reflecting experiences that no amount of washing could cleanse. Exhaustion crashed over her like a physical wave, and she collapsed onto the bed without bothering to turn down the covers. Sleep claimed her immediately, deep and dreamless, the first truly restful sleep she had experienced in longer than she could remember. She slept through the afternoon, through the evening, and straight into the next morning, her body finally able to release the tension that had kept her running on fear and adrenaline. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the window, painting golden rectangles on the floor. For a disoriented moment, she could not remember where she was, panic rising in her chest until the events of the previous day filtered back through her consciousness. Monticello, Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, James Irving and his inexplicable kindness. She was safe, at least for now, with a locked door between her and the world. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Zimmerman, are you awake?" Mrs. Patterson's voice called through the door. "I have breakfast if you are interested." Olivia rose and unlocked the door, opening it to find the landlady holding a tray laden with scrambled eggs, bacon, toasted bread with butter and jam, and a steaming cup of coffee. The sight of so much food made her stomach growl audibly. "Good, you have an appetite, Mrs. Patterson said with satisfaction, bringing the tray inside and setting it on the dresser. "That is a positive sign. You slept for nearly 18 hours straight, which tells me you needed every minute of it. How are you feeling this morning?" "Better," Olivia admitted, surprised to find it was true. Her body still ached, and the emotional wounds remained raw and open, but the bone-deep exhaustion had receded somewhat. "Thank you for the food and for the dress and for everything else. I do not know how I will ever repay you and Mr. Irving for your generosity. James already covered your room and board for the week, so you do not need to worry about that immediately," Mrs. Patterson said. settling into the chair by the window while Olivia sat on the bed and began eating. What you do need to think about is what comes next. Monticello is not a large town, but there is usually work available for those willing to do it. Can you cook or clean or do laundry? I can do all of those things, Olivia confirmed between bites of eggs. I can also sew and mend, do basic nursing, help with gardening, preserve food, and manage household accounts. My mother made sure I learned all the practical skills before she died. Those are valuable skills, especially the sewing and mending, Mrs. Patterson said thoughtfully. The miners are always tearing their clothes and need repairs. Most of them have more money than sense when it comes to taking care of their things. I am sure we could drum up some business for you if you are interested. I could spread the word that you are available for mending work, and you could set up here in your room or in my sitting room downstairs. That would be wonderful, Olivia said, hope flickering in her chest like a candle flame in the wind, small but determined. I would be grateful for any work you can help me find. Consider it done, Mrs. Patterson declared, rising to her feet. I will mention it to some of the regulars who take meals here. Now, when you are finished eating, bring the tray down to the kitchen. James stopped by earlier asking after you, wanted to make sure you had settled in all right. He mentioned he might come by later if you were feeling up to visitors. After Mrs. Patterson left, Olivia took her time finishing breakfast, savoring each bite and trying to remember the last time she had eaten a meal without fear knotting her stomach. Food tasted different when consumed in safety, she discovered, flavors brighter and more distinct. She thought about James's planned visit and found herself experiencing a confusing mix of anticipation and anxiety. Part of her wanted to see him again, to confirm that his kindness yesterday had been real and not some fever dream conjured by her desperate mind. Another part feared getting close to anyone, especially a man, even one who seemed gentle and genuine. She carried the tray downstairs as instructed and found Mrs. Patterson in the kitchen, a large room dominated by a cast iron stove and a work table scarred from years of use. Two other women were present, one washing dishes and the other peeling potatoes. Both looked up with curiosity when Olivia entered. "Ladies, this is Miss Olivia Zimmerman," Mrs. Patterson announced, taking the tray from her. "She will be staying with us for a while." "Olivia, this is Mary Chen and Susan Miller. Mary helps with the cooking and cleaning, and Susan is Doc Miller's wife. She helps out here a few days a week for extra money. Pleased to meet you," Olivia said quietly, nodding to each woman in turn. Mary, a Chinese woman in her 30s with kind eyes and quick hands, smiled warmly. "Welcome to Monticello, Miss Zimmerman. Any friend of James Irving is welcome here. He is a good man, helped my family when we first arrived and some of the miners were giving us trouble." "James helps everyone," Susan added, her round face friendly beneath her bonnet. "My husband says he is the most decent man in 3 territories, always first to volunteer when someone needs help and last to ask for anything in return. You could not have found a better person to look out for you." Their easy acceptance and praise of James eased some of Olivia's anxiety. If these women, who clearly knew the town and its people well, spoke so highly of him, perhaps she could trust that his intentions were genuine. Perhaps not all men were like her husband, using kindness as a weapon and love as a cage. The morning passed in pleasant conversation as Olivia helped with simple kitchen tasks, falling easily into the rhythm of domestic work. It felt good to be useful, to contribute something rather than simply receiving charity. Mrs. Patterson put her to work chopping vegetables for the evening stew, and Olivia appreciated the familiar, meditative quality of the task. James arrived just after noon, appearing in the kitchen doorway with his hat in his hands and an uncertain expression on his face. He looked younger in the daylight streaming through the windows, probably no more than 25 or 26, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested an optimistic disposition despite the hard work of ranch life. "Mrs. Patterson said I might find you here," he said, his gaze finding Olivia at the work table. "I wanted to check and make sure you were settling in all right and see if you needed anything." "I am doing well, thank you," Olivia replied, setting down her knife and wiping her hands on the towel at her waist. "You have been incredibly generous and I appreciate everything you have done for me." "Would you like to take a walk?" James asked. "It is a beautiful day, and I thought you might like to see a bit of the town, get your bearings. Only if you are feeling up to it, of course. I do not want to push you into anything you are not ready for." Olivia hesitated, glancing at Mrs. Patterson for guidance. The older woman made a shooing motion with her hands. "Go on, get some fresh air. The vegetables will still be here when you get back. James, you make sure she does not overdo it. She is still recovering her strength." They stepped out into the bright afternoon, Monticello spreading before them in all its rough frontier charm. The town consisted of a single main street with various businesses clustered along its length. The general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, the assay office, a small church, the hotel, and several other establishments that served the mining community. Behind the main street, houses and cabins dotted the hillsides, and in the distance, the mountains rose in magnificent peaks that still held snow on their highest elevations. James walked slowly, matching his pace to Olivia's limited endurance, pointing out various landmarks and introducing her to townspeople they encountered. Most people responded to James with genuine warmth, and many eyed Olivia with curiosity but not unkindness. She learned that Monticello had been established about 15 years prior as a Mormon settlement, though it had since attracted people of various backgrounds drawn by the possibility of mining wealth or ranching opportunities. "The ranch where I work is about 3 miles south of town," James explained as they paused near the church to rest on a bench in the shade. "The Harrington spread. Mr. Harrington and his sons run cattle, and I work as a ranch hand, mostly dealing with the horses. I have always had a way with horses, can gentle even the most stubborn ones if given enough time and patience." "That sounds like good work," Olivia said, genuinely interested. "Do you enjoy it?" "I do," James confirmed, his face lighting up with enthusiasm. "There is something honest about working with animals and the land. A horse does not lie to you or pretend to be something it is not. If you treat them right, they will give you everything they have. Cattle are not quite as personable, but they have their own dignity. And Mr. Harrington is a fair boss, pays decent wages, and does not work us beyond reason." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching townspeople go about their business. A freight wagon rumbled past, loaded with supplies. 2 children chased each other down the street, their laughter bright in the afternoon air. A dog slept in a patch of sunlight outside the blacksmith shop. It was all so ordinary, so peaceful, that Olivia felt something in her chest begin to unclench. "Can I ask you something?" James said carefully, his tone gentle but serious. "You do not have to answer if you do not want to, but I am curious. What brought you all the way out here? Monticello is pretty far off the beaten path, not the first place most people would think to run to." Olivia considered how much to reveal, weighing the risk of honesty against the surprising desire to confide in this man, who had shown her nothing but kindness. "I was living in Colorado Territory with my husband. He was a miner, struck a small vein of silver and thought it made him king of the world. The money went to drink and gambling, and when he lost, he took his anger out on me. I stayed longer than I should have, kept believing his promises that he would change, that things would get better. But they only got worse. "What made you finally leave?" James asked softly. "He came home drunk one night and said he had lost our cabin and everything we owned in a card game," Olivia said, the memory still fresh and painful. "He blamed me, said I had cursed him with bad luck, that everything wrong in his life was my fault. He beat me worse than ever before, and I knew that if I stayed, he would eventually kill me. So when he passed out, I took what little I could carry and I ran. I did not have a destination in mind, just kept moving, trying to put as much distance between us as possible." James's jaw tightened with barely suppressed anger, but his voice remained calm and controlled. "He had no right to treat you that way. No man does. I am glad you found the courage to leave, though I wish you had not had to go through any of that in the first place." "I do not know why you care," Olivia said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I am nobody, just another broken woman with nothing to offer. You could have walked past me yesterday and saved yourself a lot of trouble and expense." "You are not nobody," James said firmly, turning on the bench to face her fully. "You are a person who deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, who deserves safety and kindness and the chance to build a life without fear. What your husband did to you was wrong, and it was not your fault. None of it was your fault." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, hot and stinging. "I do not deserve your kindness," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I am not worth the trouble." "Now we have already had this conversation once," James said gently, reaching out slowly enough that she could see his hand coming and pull away if she wanted. When she did not flinch, he carefully placed his hand over hers where it rested on the bench between them. His palm was warm and calloused from hard work, but his touch was feather-light, respectful. "You deserve kindness simply because you exist, because you are a human being. You do not have to earn it or prove your worth. It should be freely given, no strings attached." "I do not understand you," Olivia admitted, staring down at their hands, his darker skin contrasting with her pale fingers. "Men like you are not supposed to exist. In my experience, everyone wants something, and kindness always comes with a price attached." "Then your experience has been with the wrong kind of men," James said simply. "I am not going to pretend I am perfect or that I do not have my own flaws and struggles. But I was raised to believe that how we treat others, especially those who need help, defines our character. My mother used to say that true strength is not about how hard you can hit, but about how gentle you can be when you have all the power." They sat together for a long time, hands touching lightly, neither of them speaking. Olivia felt something shift inside her, a tiny crack in the armor she had built around her heart. It terrified her, this small opening, this dangerous possibility that maybe James was exactly what he appeared to be. A genuinely kind man who wanted nothing more than to help someone in need. Over the following days, James made it his habit to visit Olivia every afternoon after finishing his work at the Harrington Ranch. He would arrive dusty from the trail, sometimes smelling of horses and leather, always with a smile and some small offering. Wildflowers he had picked along the way, interesting rocks he thought she might like, once a book of poetry he had borrowed from the ranch foreman's wife. He never stayed long, never pushed for more time or attention than she was comfortable giving, but his consistent presence became something she looked forward to, a bright spot in her days. Mrs. Patterson proved as good as her word, spreading news of Olivia's sewing and mending skills throughout the community. Within a week, she had a steady stream of customers bringing torn shirts, pants with blown-out knees, jackets missing buttons, and all manner of textile repairs. The work was not glamorous, but it was honest, and Olivia found satisfaction in restoring order to damaged garments, in making things whole again through patient attention. She set up a small workspace in the corner of the boarding house sitting room, where she could work during the day while still being part of the household activity. Mary Chen taught her some Chinese embroidery techniques during slow afternoons, creating beautiful decorative elements that Olivia could offer as an additional service. Susan Miller brought her medical supplies to sew into proper bandages, paying fairly for work that would help her husband treat patients. The money came in slowly but steadily, small amounts that Olivia carefully saved in a cloth pouch she kept hidden in her room. Each coin represented independence, the possibility of standing on her own 2 feet without relying on anyone else. She kept careful account of what she owed James for her initial room and board, determined to repay him as soon as she had accumulated enough. Pride demanded it, even though he had never once mentioned the debt or suggested she owed him anything. One particularly hot afternoon in late June, James arrived earlier than usual, leading a gentle-looking mare with a sweet face and intelligent eyes. Olivia had been sitting on the boarding house porch, taking advantage of the slight breeze while hand-stitching a torn vest, when she heard hoofbeats approaching. "Good afternoon, Olivia," James called out, dismounting from his own horse and tying both animals to the hitching post. "I was wondering if you might like to go for a ride. I borrowed Daisy here from the ranch. She is the gentlest horse we have, perfect for someone who might not have much riding experience." Olivia set aside her sewing, uncertainty warring with interest. "I have not ridden much," she admitted. "My husband had a horse, but he never let me ride it. Said I would probably break my neck and leave him saddled with medical bills." "Daisy would never let anything happen to you," James assured her, stroking the mare's neck affectionately. "She has been teaching children to ride for years and has more patience than any horse I have ever met. We could just take a slow ride out of town, maybe follow the creek for a bit. The cottonwoods are beautiful right now, and it is cooler near the water." The offer was tempting, representing a freedom Olivia had not experienced in years. "All right," she said, making the decision quickly before she could talk herself out of it. "Let me tell Mrs. Patterson where I am going." James helped her mount, his hands steady and respectful as he guided her foot into the stirrup and supported her as she swung her leg over the saddle. Daisy stood perfectly still throughout the process, as though understanding the importance of making her rider feel secure. Once Olivia was settled, James adjusted her stirrups to the proper length and showed her how to hold the reins. "Just relax and move with her," he instructed, swinging up onto his own mount with practiced ease. "Daisy knows what to do. You are just a passenger along for the ride. If you need to stop or slow down, just tell me and we will adjust. This is supposed to be enjoyable, not stressful." They rode out of town at a sedate walk, James keeping his horse close to Daisy's shoulder, ready to help if needed but not hovering. The mare's gait was smooth and steady, her movements predictable and safe. Olivia found herself relaxing into the rhythm, her body gradually learning to move with the horse rather than fighting against the motion. They followed a well-worn trail that paralleled a creek lined with cottonwoods and willows, their leaves rustling in the breeze. The sound of water flowing over rocks provided pleasant background music, and birds called to each other from the branches overhead. After the confines of the town and the boarding house, the open space felt liberating, reminding Olivia that the world was larger than her fear and pain. "This is wonderful," she said, genuine pleasure coloring her voice. "Thank you for suggesting it." "I am glad you are enjoying it," James replied, satisfaction evident in his expression. I try to get out riding whenever I can, just to clear my head and remember that there is more to life than work and obligations. The land out here is beautiful in a harsh way, demands respect but gives back so much if you pay attention. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the horses' hoofbeats, the creeks burbling, and the wind in the trees. Olivia felt something in her chest expand, a lightness she had not experienced in so long she had almost forgotten what it felt like. Joy, she realized with surprise. This small moment of peace and beauty and simple companionship was bringing her joy. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia ventured after a while, emboldened by the pleasant atmosphere and the growing trust she felt toward this man who kept showing up in her life with nothing but genuine kindness. "Why do you keep coming to see me? You have already helped me more than I could have hoped for, gotten me set up with a place to stay and work. You do not owe me anything more, and yet you keep showing up." James considered the question carefully, his gaze on the trail ahead. "Honestly, because I enjoy your company. I like talking with you, seeing the small ways you relax a bit more each day, watching you start to believe that maybe things can be different here. You have this strength in you that I admire, this determination to survive and build something new despite everything you have been through. That is worth knowing, worth spending time around." "I do not feel strong," Olivia confessed. "Most days I feel like I am barely holding myself together, like at any moment I might fall apart completely." "Strength is not the absence of fear or pain," James said thoughtfully. "It is continuing forward even when you are scared, even when it hurts. You left a dangerous situation with nothing but the clothes on your back. You walked for days to reach safety. You accepted help when you needed it, and now you are working to build a new life for yourself. That takes incredible courage and strength, even if it does not feel that way from the inside." They rode for another hour, James pointing out various plants and wildlife, sharing stories about the area and his work at the ranch. He talked about his own life with surprising openness, explaining that he had come west 5 years earlier after his parents died of cholera back in Missouri. He had one older sister who had married and moved to California, and they corresponded occasionally through letters that took months to reach each other. "You ever think about settling down?" Olivia asked, surprised by her own boldness. "Finding a wife and starting a family?" "I think about it sometimes," James admitted, a slight flush coloring his cheeks beneath his tan. "But I have not met the right person yet. Ranch work keeps me busy, and Monticello does not have a huge selection of single women. Plus, I have always figured that marriage should be about more than just convenience or loneliness. I want to find someone I genuinely connect with, someone I respect and admire, someone who feels like a partner rather than just a wife." "That is a nice sentiment," Olivia said softly. "I hope you find that someday." "Maybe I already have," James said quietly, so quietly she almost missed it over the sound of the creek. Her heart stuttered in her chest, hope and fear colliding in a confusing tangle. "James, you do not have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I am not asking for anything or expecting anything. I just wanted you to know that I enjoy your company, that I value the time we spend together, and that I would like to continue spending time with you if you are comfortable with that. No pressure, no obligations. Just two people getting to know each other." They turned back toward town as the afternoon shadows lengthened, riding side by side in thoughtful silence. Olivia's mind spun with James's words, with the implications and possibilities they represented. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from the vulnerability that caring about someone required. But another part, growing stronger each day, wanted to take the risk, to believe that maybe not all men were dangerous, that maybe she could have something good in her life. As summer progressed into July, Olivia and James fell into a comfortable routine. He continued visiting every afternoon, sometimes taking her riding, other times just sitting on the boarding house porch talking while she worked on her mending. They discussed books they had read, places they had been, dreams they held for the future. James proved to be surprisingly well-read for a cowboy, possessing a curiosity about the world that led him to borrow books whenever possible and read by lamplight after long days of work. Olivia found herself looking forward to his visits with increasing anticipation, found herself thinking about him during the quiet moments of her day, found herself smiling at random memories of things he had said or done. Mrs. Patterson noticed, of course, commenting with approval that James Irving was exactly the sort of steady, reliable man that any sensible woman would be lucky to have. "He is good to his core," Mrs. Patterson said one evening while they prepared dinner in the kitchen. "I have known James for 5 years now, and I have never once seen him be cruel or dishonest. He works hard, treats everyone with respect, and would give you his last dollar if he thought you needed it more than he did. You could do much worse, my dear." "I am not looking for a husband," Olivia protested, though her denial lacked conviction. "I have only been here a few months. My marriage to Thomas is not even properly ended. I am still legally married even if I never plan to return to him. Divorce is possible if you want to pursue it, Mrs. Patterson said pragmatically. "Complicated and somewhat scandalous, but possible, especially given the circumstances. Abandonment and cruelty are grounds that courts will recognize, particularly here in the territories where people are generally more practical about such matters. My cousin helped a woman get divorced from her husband 3 years ago in Salt Lake City. It took time and money, but it was accomplished." The idea of divorce had not seriously occurred to Olivia, raised as she had been to believe that marriage was permanent regardless of circumstances. But the possibility of actually, legally ending her bond to Thomas held enormous appeal, representing true freedom rather than just physical distance. "I would not even know how to start that process," she admitted, hope and uncertainty mingling in her chest. "We would need to consult with a lawyer," Mrs. Patterson said. "There is one in Blanding, about 20 miles from here. He rides a circuit through several towns and usually visits Monticello once a month. I can inquire when he is next expected and arrange a meeting if you would like." "Yes," Olivia said decisively. "Yes, I would like that very much." The lawyer, a middle-aged man named Mr. Henderson, arrived in mid-July and met with Olivia in Mrs. Patterson's sitting room, James present for moral support at Olivia's request. Mr. Henderson listened carefully to her story, taking detailed notes about the abuse, the gambling, Thomas's abandonment of their household responsibilities, and Olivia's eventual flight. "You have good grounds for divorce," Mr. Henderson concluded after hearing the full account. "Cruelty and abandonment are both recognized causes of action in Utah Territory. The challenge will be serving notice to your husband, as the court will require that he be informed of the proceedings and given opportunity to respond. You know his current location?" "The last I knew, he was in Leadville, Colorado Territory," Olivia said. "But he could have moved by now. He rarely stayed in one place for long, always chasing the next big strike." "I can arrange for notices to be posted in Leadville and several other mining towns in that area," Mr. Henderson said. "It will take time and cost some money, but it can be done. The entire process will likely require 6 months to a year, possibly longer if your husband contests the divorce or if we have difficulty locating him. My fee is $50, plus court costs and the expense of posting notices. $50. Olivia's heart sank at the figure, which represented more money than she had saved from her mending work. She had perhaps $20 accumulated, carefully hoarded against future need. The rest would require months more of work to earn. "I can loan you the money," James offered immediately. "You can pay me back whenever you are able. There is no rush." "I cannot ask you to do that," Olivia protested, even as part of her desperately wanted to accept. "You have already done so much for me." "You are not asking, I am offering," James corrected gently. "And before you say anything about charity or not deserving help, remember that this is an investment in your future, in your freedom. Let me help you with this. Please." Olivia looked between James and Mr. Henderson, weighing pride against practicality, independence against the offered help that would allow her to move forward with her life. "All right," she finally agreed, the words difficult but necessary. "Thank you, James. I will repay you every penny." "I promise." "I know you will," James said simply, pulling out his wallet and counting out the bills for Mr. Henderson's retainer. "And I am not worried about it." Mr. Henderson accepted the payment and began preparing the necessary paperwork, asking Olivia detailed questions about her marriage, her husband's full name and last known address, dates and places of significance. The process was invasive and uncomfortable, requiring her to recount specifics of Thomas's abuse in clinical terms for the legal record. James held her hand throughout, silent support that kept her grounded when the memories threatened to overwhelm her. "I will file the petition with the territorial court in Monticello," Mr. Henderson said once all the paperwork was complete. "Then we begin the process of attempting to notify your husband. With any luck, he will not contest the divorce, and we can proceed to a final decree without too much complication. I will keep you informed of any developments." After Mr. Henderson departed, Olivia sat in exhausted silence in the boarding house sitting room, emotionally drained from reliving her marriage's worst moments. James remained beside her, patient and steady, not pressuring her to talk but clearly willing to listen if she wanted. "I feel like I should be happy," Olivia said eventually. "This is what I want, legal freedom from Thomas. But instead, I just feel tired and sad and angry that it has come to this, that my marriage failed so completely." "The marriage failed because your husband chose cruelty and selfishness over partnership and love," James said firmly. "That is not your fault, and you should not carry guilt for his failures. You are taking steps to protect yourself and build a better future. That is brave and right, not something to feel sad about." "You really believe I am brave?" Olivia asked, searching his face for any sign of insincerity or platitude. "I absolutely believe it," James confirmed without hesitation. "You are one of the bravest people I have ever met. You survived terrible circumstances, you found the strength to leave, you accepted help when you needed it, and now you are working to build something new. That takes remarkable courage." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but for once they were not tears of pain or shame. Something in James's steady belief in her, his consistent kindness and support, was beginning to heal wounds she had thought permanent. "I am starting to care about you," she admitted quietly, the words terrifying and liberating simultaneously. "It scares me how much I look forward to seeing you each day, how much I have come to rely on your presence." "Is that a bad thing?" James asked gently. "I do not know," Olivia said honestly. "The last time I cared about a man, it ended in so much pain. I am afraid of making the same mistake again, of trusting someone who will eventually hurt me." "I cannot promise I will never hurt you unintentionally," James said seriously. "I am human and flawed, and I will undoubtedly say or do the wrong thing sometimes. But I can promise that I will never deliberately hurt you, that I will never raise a hand to you in anger, that I will always treat you with respect and honesty. And if I do mess up, I will listen when you tell me, and I will do my best to make it right." "That is all I can ask," Olivia said softly. "I am starting to believe that you are different from Thomas, that not all men are dangerous. It is strange and uncomfortable learning to trust again." "Take all the time you need," James assured her. "I am not going anywhere, and I am not going to pressure you for more than you are ready to give. We can move at whatever pace feels right to you." August arrived with scorching heat that drove most people to seek shade during the afternoon hours. Olivia's mending business continued to thrive, supplemented now with custom embroidery work that commanded higher prices. She had repaid James for her initial room and board, and was steadily working toward repaying the money he had loaned for the divorce proceedings. He consistently told her not to worry about it, but she insisted on treating it as a proper debt, needing to prove to herself that she could stand on her own financially. James convinced her to attend the town social one Saturday evening, a monthly gathering where the community came together for food, music, and dancing. Olivia had been hesitant, uncomfortable with the idea of being in a crowd, but James promised to stay by her side and leave whenever she wanted. The social was held in the church hall, tables laden with dishes contributed by various households. Someone had brought a fiddle, another person a guitar, and together they provided lively music that had couples whirling across the floor in reels and waltzes. Children ran between the adults, playing games and sneaking treats from the dessert table. The atmosphere was warm and welcoming, free of the judgment Olivia had feared. James introduced her to the Harringtons, the family who owned the ranch where he worked. Mr. Harrington was a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Harrington, a plump woman with a ready smile, immediately made Olivia feel welcome, asking about her sewing business and commissioning some embroidery work for Christmas gifts. "James talks about you constantly," Mrs. Harrington confided, lowering her voice so only Olivia could hear. "It is Olivia this and Olivia that, to the point where my sons tease him mercilessly. I am glad to finally meet the woman who has captured his attention so completely." Before Olivia could respond, James returned from fetching them both cups of punch. "Mrs. Harrington, are you embarrassing me?" he asked with mock severity. "Only a little," Mrs. Harrington replied with a laugh. "Someone needs to keep you humble, and the good Lord knows your coworkers are not doing an adequate job of it. Now, are you going to ask this lovely young lady to dance? Or are you going to make her stand here all evening watching everyone else have fun?" James turned to Olivia, extending his hand with exaggerated formality. "Miss Zimmerman, would you do me the honor of this dance?" "I am not very good at dancing," Olivia warned, even as she placed her hand in his. "Thomas never wanted to go to social events, so I have had little practice." "Then we will figure it out together," James said, leading her onto the floor as the musicians struck up a waltz. "Just follow my lead and do not worry about being perfect. The point is to have fun, not to impress anyone." He proved to be a competent dancer, guiding her through the steps with patience when she stumbled or lost the rhythm. Other couples swirled around them, but Olivia found herself focusing entirely on James, on the warmth of his hand at her waist, on the gentle pressure of his fingers holding hers, on the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. The music seemed to fade into background noise, the other dancers into indistinct shapes, everything narrowing to this moment, this man, this unexpected feeling of safety and joy. When the song ended, they stood together for a heartbeat longer than necessary, neither wanting to break the connection. Then James released her waist, but kept hold of her hand, leading her outside where the evening air provided relief from the crowded hall's warmth. "Thank you for coming tonight," James said once they stood beneath the stars, crickets chirping in the darkness beyond the church. "I know being around so many people was difficult for you." "It was easier than I expected," Olivia admitted. "Everyone has been kind, and having you with me made me feel safe. I enjoyed dancing with you, even if I stepped on your feet several times." "I enjoyed it too," James said softly. "Olivia, I know this might be too soon, and you can absolutely tell me if I am overstepping, but I need you to know that my feelings for you have become something more than friendship. I have fallen in love with you. I love your strength and your kindness and your determination. I love the way you tackle problems head-on despite being afraid. I love that you insisted on repaying me even though I told you it was not necessary, because your independence matters to you. I love your laugh when you finally let yourself relax enough to find something truly funny. I am in love with you, and I wanted you to know." Olivia's breath caught in her throat, emotions swirling too fast to name or sort. Fear warred with hope, old pain collided with new possibility. "I am still married," she whispered. "Legally, technically married, even though I have run away." "I know," James said. "And I am not asking you to do anything about my feelings right now. I just wanted to be honest with you to let you know where I stand. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be here. And if you decide you do not feel the same way, that is all right too. I value your friendship regardless." "I am afraid," Olivia confessed, the words pulled from somewhere deep inside. "I am afraid of caring about you too much, of being vulnerable again, of trusting that this is real and will not turn into something dark and painful." "That is completely understandable given what you have been through," James said, his voice full of compassion. "I am not asking you to stop being afraid. I am just hoping that maybe, over time, you might find that the fear becomes manageable, that you can care about me despite the fear rather than waiting for the fear to disappear entirely." They stood in the darkness together, hands still linked, the sounds of music and laughter drifting from the church hall. Olivia thought about all the ways James had shown his care through actions rather than just words. The consistent visits, the small gifts, the loans offered without expectation of repayment, the patience with her fears and hesitations, the respect for her boundaries. He had been showing her love every single day through 1,000 small kindnesses, proving through sustained behavior that he was trustworthy and genuine. "I am falling in love with you too," she finally admitted, the words terrifying and liberating. "I have been fighting it because I was scared, but I cannot deny it anymore. I think about you constantly. I look forward to your visits more than anything else in my day. When I imagine my future, you are in it. That frightens me because I have been hurt so badly before, but it also makes me hopeful in a way I have not felt in years." James's smile could have lit the entire night. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he raised their linked hands to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you for trusting me with your feelings," he said softly. "I promise I will do everything in my power to be worthy of that trust." They returned to the social eventually, but everything felt different now, colored by the acknowledged feelings between them. They danced twice more before Olivia's energy flagged, and James walked her back to the boarding house through streets quieted by the late hour. At the door, he squeezed her hand gently, not attempting more, respecting the fragile new understanding between them. "Good night, Olivia," he said softly. "Sleep well." "Good night, James," she replied. "Thank you for a wonderful evening." The next morning, Mrs. Patterson appeared at Olivia's room with a letter that had arrived in the mail pouch. "From Mr. Henderson," the landlady announced, handing over the envelope with barely contained curiosity. Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Mr. Henderson's precise handwriting detailed that notices had been successfully posted in Leadville and 3 other Colorado mining towns, as well as published in relevant newspapers. He had also hired a local investigator who had located Thomas Zimmerman, working at a mine near Central City. Thomas had been served with divorce papers and had 30 days to respond with any objections or counterclaims. He found him, Olivia breathed, relief and anxiety warring in her chest. Thomas has been served with the divorce papers. That is excellent news, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. Now we wait to see if the wretch will contest it or accept the inevitable. The waiting proved more difficult than Olivia had anticipated. Every day she wondered if Thomas would fight the divorce, if he would somehow track her to Monticello, if the tenuous new life she was building would come crashing down. James remained a steady presence throughout, visiting every afternoon as usual, never mentioning the waiting except to offer reassurance when Olivia's anxiety became visible. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color in the high mountain valleys. Olivia had been in Monticello for 4 months, and the town had begun to feel like home in ways she had not experienced since childhood. She knew the shopkeepers by name, had formed friendships with several women in town, attended church services regularly, and had established herself as a reliable seamstress whose work commanded fair prices. The letter from Mr. Henderson arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by the mail rider who passed through weekly. Olivia carried it upstairs to her room, hands shaking too badly to open it in public. She sat on her bed, staring at the envelope for several minutes, gathering courage. Inside, Mr. Henderson's letter explained that the 30-day period for Thomas to respond had passed without any contestation. Thomas had not filed objections, had not hired a lawyer, had not responded to the notices at all. The court had therefore entered a default judgment, granting Olivia's petition for divorce on grounds of cruelty and abandonment. She was legally free. She read the letter 3 times, struggling to believe the words were real. Free. She was free. No longer bound by law to a man who had hurt her. No longer constrained by marital vows that had been broken long before she found the courage to leave. The weight she had carried for years began to lift, leaving her feeling strangely light, almost dizzy with relief. James arrived an hour later for his usual visit, taking one look at her face and immediately concerned. "What is wrong? What happened?" "Nothing is wrong," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face even as she smiled. "Everything is right. The divorce is final. Thomas did not contest it, and the court granted my petition. I am free, James. I am actually, legally free." James whooped with joy, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around the boarding house sitting room while Mrs. Patterson emerged from the kitchen to see what the commotion was about. "That is wonderful news," he exclaimed. "The best possible outcome." When he set her back on her feet, they were both laughing and crying simultaneously, overwhelmed by relief and happiness. Mrs. Patterson insisted on opening a bottle of wine she had been saving for a special occasion, pouring generous glasses for all 3 of them, while Susan Miller and Mary Chen joined the impromptu celebration. "To Olivia and her fresh start," Mrs. Patterson declared, raising her glass. "May your future be filled with all the happiness you deserve." They clinked glasses and drank, the wine warm and sweet on Olivia's tongue. She looked around at these women who had become her friends, who had supported her through the difficult months of building a new life, and felt gratitude swell in her chest. Then her gaze found James, still grinning with delight at her news, and her heart expanded with something that felt very much like love. Later that evening, after the others had returned to their activities, James asked if Olivia wanted to go for a walk. They wandered through town and out to the creek that had become one of their favorite spots, finding a smooth boulder near the water where they could sit side by side. "I have been thinking," James began, uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. "Now that you are officially divorced, now that you are truly free to make your own choices, I was hoping we could discuss what comes next. For us, I mean." "What do you want to come next?" Olivia asked, turning to face him in the twilight. "I want to court you properly," James said simply. "I want to take you to socials and on rides and to church on Sundays. I want everyone in town to know that you are my girl, that I am serious about you. And eventually, when you are ready, when enough time has passed that you feel comfortable with it, I want to ask you to marry me. I want to build a life with you, Olivia. I want a home and a family and all the ordinary, beautiful things that make life worth living." Olivia's heart thundered in her chest, hope and fear still tangled, but hope slowly winning the battle. "I want those things too," she admitted. "I did not think I would ever want to marry again after Thomas, but you have shown me that marriage can be something different, something good. You have shown me what love looks like when it is real and healthy and kind. I would be honored to have you court me properly." "Really?" James's face lit with such joy that Olivia had to laugh. "Really," she confirmed. "Though I want to take things slowly, build a solid foundation before we talk about marriage. I want to be certain, for both our sakes, that what we have is strong enough to last." "We can take all the time you need," James promised. "I am not in a rush. I just want to be with you to see where this leads us. Everything else can unfold at whatever pace feels right." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and brushed his lips against hers in a kiss so gentle it felt like a question rather than a demand. Olivia froze for half a heartbeat, old reflexes screaming danger, but then she consciously relaxed into the kiss, letting herself experience the sweetness of it, the tenderness. When they parted, both were smiling. "That was nice," Olivia said, slightly breathless. "It really was," James agreed. "Can I do it again?" "Yes," Olivia said, and this time when his lips met hers, she was ready, leaning into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. The courtship that followed unfolded with the same gentle patience James had shown from the beginning. He came calling on Sundays, dressed in his best clothes, bringing flowers or small gifts. They attended church together, sitting side by side in the pews, their hands clasped discreetly between them. He took her on rides through the countryside, showing her the beautiful hidden valleys and mountain vistas around Monticello. They had dinner with the Harringtons several times, and Olivia felt welcomed into the family atmosphere of the ranch. As autumn deepened into October and November, Olivia found herself relaxing more fully than she had thought possible. The constant tension that had defined her existence for years gradually eased, replaced by a growing sense of security and belonging. James continued to show his love through actions as well as words, helping her move firewood when the weather turned cold, fixing a broken window in her room, bringing her books she might enjoy, listening with genuine interest when she talked about her work or her past or her hopes for the future. They had their first argument in December, a minor disagreement about Christmas plans that escalated due to miscommunication and stress. Olivia had automatically assumed James would spend the holiday with the Harringtons and had not expected him to want to include her, while James had taken for granted that they would celebrate together, and felt hurt that she had not considered him in her plans. The argument was brief and relatively mild, but Olivia's first instinct was to flee, to pack her things and run before things could escalate. Instead, she forced herself to stay, to communicate her fear that the argument represented the beginning of a pattern that would lead to violence. James, understanding the root of her reaction, had carefully kept his distance, staying across the room, keeping his voice calm and level despite his own hurt feelings. "I am not your first husband," he said quietly. "Disagreeing with me is not going to result in me hurting you. I promise you that, Olivia. We are going to argue sometimes because we are two different people with different perspectives and needs. But arguing does not mean violence, does not mean cruelty, does not mean the relationship is falling apart. It just means we need to communicate better and find a compromise that works for both of us." They had talked it through, both apologizing for their parts in the miscommunication, and reached an agreement to spend Christmas Day with the Harringtons and Christmas Eve with Mrs. Patterson and the boarding house residents. The resolution of the conflict without drama or violence proved to be healing in its own way, showing Olivia that disagreements could be navigated safely, that two people could be angry with each other and still treat each other with respect. Christmas arrived with snow blanketing the town and the surrounding mountains. Olivia gave James a scarf she had knitted herself, painstakingly creating the pattern during evening hours when he was not visiting. James gave her a leather-bound journal and a set of quality pencils, having noticed that she sometimes wrote down thoughts and observations, but used whatever scraps of paper came to hand. "For documenting your new life," he said softly, as she ran her fingers over the journal's smooth cover. "So someday you can look back and remember how far you have come." They stood together on the boarding house porch, watching snow fall through the lamplight, and James pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone." "I love you too," Olivia replied, the words coming easier each time she said them. "Thank you for your patience with me, for not pushing me to move faster than I was ready for." "Thank you for trusting me," James said. "I know how hard that has been for you, and I do not take it for granted." As winter progressed into the new year of 1879, James began gently raising the topic of marriage, not pressuring but making his intentions clear. Olivia found herself considering the possibility with cautious optimism rather than fear. She had been in Monticello for 9 months, had been divorced for 5 months, and had been courting James for 4 months. It felt soon by conventional standards, but she also recognized that James had been proving himself trustworthy every single day for longer than their official courtship, that she knew his character through sustained observation of his behavior. "I need to be certain," she told him one February afternoon as they sat in the boarding house parlor, her latest mending project spread across her lap. "Not of you, but of myself. I need to know that I am choosing marriage because I genuinely want it, not because I feel obligated or because I am afraid of being alone or for any other reason except that I love you and want to build a life with you." "That is completely reasonable," James said. "I want you to be certain too. This needs to be a choice you make freely, without pressure or doubt." They continued as they had been, courting steadily, growing ever closer. James proposed in April, on a warm spring day 9 months after their courtship began and a year after Olivia had first stumbled into Monticello. He took her riding to a high meadow carpeted with wildflowers, where the view stretched for miles in every direction, snow-capped peaks standing sentinel on the horizon. "Olivia Zimmerman," he said, dismounting and helping her down from Daisy's back, then going down on one knee in the flower-strewn grass. "You are the strongest, kindest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you every single day what love should look like. Will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" He produced a simple gold band, clearly not expensive but chosen with care. Olivia looked down at this man who had shown her nothing but genuine kindness and respect, who had proven his character through countless small actions, who had helped her believe in love again. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I will marry you." James stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and cried simultaneously. When he set her down, he slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. They kissed in the meadow surrounded by wildflowers and possibility, both of them grinning like fools. They were married in June in the small church in Monticello, surrounded by friends who had become family. Mrs. Patterson cried through the entire ceremony. The Harringtons attended in force, proud of James and welcoming Olivia into their extended circle. Mary Chen and Susan Miller served as witnesses, both wiping away happy tears as Olivia and James exchanged vows. Olivia wore a dress she had made herself, simple but elegant, pale blue fabric with delicate white embroidery. James wore a new suit purchased specially for the occasion, looking handsome and nervous as he waited at the altar. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt, the pastor keeping his remarks focused on love, commitment, and the importance of treating one's spouse with respect and kindness. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, James kissed Olivia gently, reverently, and she felt no fear, only joy and love and gratitude for this second chance at happiness. The reception afterward featured food contributed by half the town, music and dancing, and a general atmosphere of celebration. Mr. Harrington approached them during the festivities with a proposal. "I have been thinking," he said, addressing both of them. "My oldest son is planning to move to Montana to start his own spread, which means I will need a new foreman. James, I would like to offer you the position, along with the foreman's cabin and a significant increase in wages. It would mean more responsibility, but I think you are ready for it, and it would give you and Olivia a proper home to start your marriage." James looked at Olivia, clearly wanting her input before accepting. She squeezed his hand and nodded. "That sounds wonderful," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We appreciate your confidence in us." They moved into the foreman's cabin a week after the wedding, a sturdy structure with 2 rooms, a real wood floor, glass windows, and a stone fireplace. It was the nicest place Olivia had ever lived, and she threw herself into making it a proper home. She sewed curtains for the windows, braided rag rugs for the floors, and arranged their few possessions with care. James built her a proper sewing table so she could continue her mending business, which many customers insisted on maintaining despite her new marital status. The first months of marriage unfolded with surprising ease, both of them adjusting to sharing space and building a life together. James proved to be a considerate husband, helping with household tasks without being asked, consulting her about decisions, ensuring she had everything she needed. Olivia worked to overcome lingering fears about male anger and learned to trust that James's even temperament was genuine, that she was safe with him even when they disagreed. They made love with tenderness and growing confidence, Olivia slowly learning that physical intimacy could be about mutual pleasure and connection, rather than fear and obligation. James was patient with her nervousness, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, always ensuring she felt safe and respected. The healing that resulted from this new understanding of physical love represented yet another way James showed her care every single day. By December, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The realization brought complicated emotions, joy mixed with anxiety about her ability to be a good mother after her own difficult experiences. She told James on Christmas Eve, presenting him with small knitted booties she had made in secret. He stared at the booties for a long moment, then looked up at her with wonder. "We are going to have a baby in late June or early July," Olivia confirmed, nervous about his reaction despite believing he would be pleased. James let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way to town, then carefully, mindfully picked Olivia up and spun her in a gentle circle. "We are going to have a baby," he repeated, setting her down and dropping to his knees to press a kiss to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you and teach you everything I know about being a good person." Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she watched James talk to their unborn child, his joy and love unfiltered and pure. "You are going to be a wonderful father," she whispered. "And you are going to be an amazing mother," James assured her, rising and pulling her into his arms. "This baby is going to be so loved, so wanted, so treasured. We are going to give our child everything we have and show them what a healthy, loving family looks like." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through winter and into spring. Olivia continued her sewing work through most of it, only stopping in the final month when the bulk of her belly made sitting at her sewing table uncomfortable. Mrs. Patterson and the other women of Monticello rallied around her, offering advice, hand-me-down baby clothes, and promises of assistance after the birth. Mrs. Harrington organized a quilting bee that produced a beautiful baby quilt, each square contributed by a different woman in the community. Their son was born on July 3, 1880, a sweltering hot day that had Olivia cursing James's name between contractions while he paced nervously outside the cabin. Mrs. Patterson and Susan Miller attended the birth, competent and reassuring as they coached Olivia through the difficult work of bringing new life into the world. When the baby finally emerged, red-faced and squalling, healthy and whole, Olivia wept with relief and joy. James was allowed in once mother and baby were cleaned and settled. He approached the bed with visible awe, staring down at the tiny bundle in Olivia's arms. "He is perfect," James breathed. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had not reached a final decision. Looking down at her son's scrunched face, Olivia made a choice. "Joseph," she said. "Joseph Irving. After the man who helped you when you were injured, the one who taught you about passing kindness forward." "It feels right." "Joseph," James repeated, testing the name. "I love it. Hello, Joseph. Welcome to the world, son. Your mother and I are so happy you are here." The first year of Joseph's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and precious moments, learning to be parents together. James proved to be a devoted father, rising for nighttime feedings despite having to work the next day, changing diapers without complaint, spending every spare moment holding his son and talking to him about everything and nothing. Olivia watched her husband with their child and felt her heart expand with love she had not known was possible. Life in the foreman's cabin fell into comfortable routines. James's increased wages meant they were financially stable, able to save money and plan for the future. Olivia gradually returned to her sewing work, though she was more selective about what projects she accepted, prioritizing time with her family. They attended church as a family, took walks together through the countryside, and spent evenings by the fireplace with James reading aloud while Olivia nursed the baby. 2 years passed, then 3, the rhythm of seasons and years marking time's passage. Joseph grew into a bright, curious toddler who adored his father and followed James around the ranch whenever permitted. Olivia became pregnant again in the spring of 1883, delivering a daughter they named Margaret in January of 1884. The little girl had Olivia's auburn hair and James's brown eyes, a perfect combination that had both parents utterly smitten. As the children grew, Olivia often reflected on the journey that had brought her to this place, this life. She thought about the terrified, broken woman who had stumbled into Monticello 6 years earlier, convinced she did not deserve kindness, certain she would never feel safe again. She thought about James finding her by the horse trough, insisting on helping despite her protests, showing up every single day with patience and gentleness and love. "What are you thinking about?" James asked one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sun set while the children played in the yard. Joseph was teaching Margaret how to identify different wildflowers, his 5-year-old seriousness adorable as he explained the difference between Indian paintbrush and columbine. "I was thinking about the day we met," Olivia admitted, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "How you insisted I deserved kindness even when I could not believe it. How you kept showing up day after day, proving through your actions that you meant what you said." "You did deserve kindness," James said simply. "You always did, even when you could not see it. I am just grateful I was in the right place at the right time to help you realize it." "You did more than help me realize it," Olivia said softly. "You showed me what love should look like. You taught me that marriage could be a partnership instead of a prison. You gave me back my faith in humanity and in myself. You showed me love every single day in 1,000 small ways until I finally believed I was worth loving." "You were always worth loving," James corrected gently, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I just got to be the lucky man who won your heart." They sat together in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their children's laughter ringing through the evening air. Olivia thought about the future stretching ahead of them, full of possibilities and promise. There would be challenges, certainly, as there were in any life. But she knew with bone-deep certainty that they would face those challenges together, that James would continue to show his love through actions as well as words, that the life they were building together was strong and good and worth every ounce of courage it had taken to reach this point. "I love you," she murmured, simple words that carried the weight of everything she felt. "I love you too," James replied, pulling her closer. "Always have, always will." The years continued to unfold, bringing their share of joys and sorrows. Mr. Harrington retired in 1886, selling the ranch to James and making him the new owner rather than just the foreman. The promotion represented the culmination of years of hard work and dedication, and James threw himself into running the ranch with characteristic diligence. Olivia expanded her sewing business into a small shop in town, employing 2 other women and taking on apprentices to teach the trade. They had 2 more children, another son named Thomas in 1887 and a daughter named Catherine in 1890, their family complete and boisterous. Mrs. Patterson passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1892, leaving the boarding house to Mary Chen, who continued running it with the same firm kindness the original owner had embodied. The loss hit Olivia hard as Mrs. Patterson had been the first person besides James to show her unconditional acceptance in Monticello. She grieved properly, supported by her husband and the community of women who had all been touched by Mrs. Patterson's generosity in one way or another. As the 19th century drew toward its close, Olivia and James celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren from Joseph, who had married young, friends and neighbors. The party was held at the ranch, tables laden with food, music filling the air, the same spirit of community and celebration that had marked their wedding 2 decades earlier. 20 years, James marveled, standing with Olivia as they watched the festivities from the porch of their considerably expanded house. It feels like both forever and no time at all. 20 years of you showing me love every single day, Olivia said, threading her fingers through his. 20 years of building this life together, of proving that love can be kind and safe and good. I am so grateful for every moment, James, even the hard ones because we faced them together. Here is to 20 more, James said, raising his glass. And 20 after that if we are lucky. I plan to love you every single day for the rest of my life. Olivia Irving. That is not a burden or an obligation. It is the greatest privilege I could imagine. They clinked glasses and drank. Then James pulled his wife into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, not caring who might be watching. Olivia kissed him back with equal enthusiasm, still amazed after all these years that she could feel so safe, so loved, so completely at home in another person's embrace. Their children grew and eventually left to build their own lives, some staying in the Monticello area and some venturing further afield. Joseph took over primary operation of the ranch in 1903, allowing James to semi-retire, though he continued to work with the horses he loved. Margaret married a teacher and moved to Salt Lake City. Thomas became a lawyer, using his skills to help people navigate the legal system with compassion. Catherine stayed close to home, marrying a local rancher and producing grandchildren at an impressive rate. Through it all, James continued to show his love through daily actions, bringing Olivia coffee in bed on cold mornings, fixing things before she had to ask, listening with genuine interest to her thoughts and concerns, supporting her business ventures and friendships, being present for every important moment, and most of the mundane ones too. The grand gestures were rare, but the small, consistent acts of care and consideration added up to a lifetime of feeling valued and treasured. Olivia, in turn, showed her love through her own actions, cooking his favorite meals, mending his clothes with extra care, surprising him with small gifts and notes, being his partner in all things, supporting his dreams and ambitions, building with him the kind of loving home neither of them had experienced as children but both desperately wanted to create for their family. They grew old together gracefully, silver threading through their hair, their bodies acquiring the comfortable roundness of age and good living. James's hands developed arthritis that made the fine work of gentling horses more difficult, so he focused on training younger men in the techniques he had perfected over decades. Olivia's eyes required spectacles for sewing, but she continued the work she loved with adaptations for her aging body. On a warm summer evening in 1918, 40 years after Olivia had first stumbled into Monticello, she and James sat together on their porch watching yet another glorious sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. They held hands as they had countless times before, comfortable in the silence of two people who knew each other completely. You ever think about what your life might have been like if you had not stopped to help me that day? Olivia asked, a question that had occurred to her periodically over the years. Not really, James admitted, because that was never a possibility. I could not have walked past someone who needed help, especially not you. From the moment I saw you sitting there, exhausted and scared and trying so hard to be strong, I knew I had to do something. I just had no idea that doing something would lead to this, to us, to the most fulfilling 40 years I could have imagined. I was so convinced I did not deserve kindness, Olivia recalled, the memory of that frightened young woman feeling very distant now. I had been beaten down for so long that I believed all the terrible things Thomas said about me, believed I was worthless and unlovable and not worth the effort to save. And I spent 40 years proving you wrong, James said with satisfaction. Showing you through my actions that you were worth every effort, every moment, every ounce of love I had to give. Did I succeed? You succeeded beyond measure, Olivia assured him, raising their joined hands to press a kiss to his weathered knuckles. You taught me that I deserved kindness, that I was worthy of love, that marriage could be a source of joy rather than fear. You showed me every single day what real love looks like, and in doing so, you saved my life in every way that matters. We saved each other, James corrected gently. You taught me that patience and gentleness could heal even the deepest wounds, that love given freely without expectation of return was its own reward, that building a life with someone you truly loved was worth any amount of effort. You made me a better man, Olivia. You gave me purpose and joy and a family I treasured beyond words. We built this beautiful life together, and I would not change a single moment of it. They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon and stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, surrounded by the life they had built through 40 years of daily choosing love, choosing kindness, choosing each other. The ranch sprawled around them, prosperous and well-maintained. Their children and grandchildren were scattered but connected, a family network built on the foundation of love and respect James and Olivia had modeled. The community of Monticello had grown and changed, but it remained the place where Olivia had found sanctuary and James had found his purpose. As night fell completely and the mountain air grew cool, they rose and went inside together, moving with the synchronized ease of two people who had shared a life for 4 decades. James banked the fire while Olivia prepared their evening tea. They sat together in the parlor, reading companionably by lamplight, occasionally looking up to exchange a smile or a comment about what they were reading. When they finally retired for the night, James helped Olivia with the buttons on her dress that her arthritic fingers struggled with, just as she helped him with tasks his own failing hands found difficult. They prepared for bed together, a routine perfected through thousands of repetitions, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of shared life. In bed, they lay facing each other in the darkness, hands clasped between them on the quilt. "Thank you," Olivia whispered, "for everything. For stopping that day in town, for insisting I deserved help, for showing up every single day to prove your love was real. Thank you for this life, James. It has been everything I never dared to dream was possible." "Thank you for trusting me," James replied softly. "For taking the risk of caring again despite how badly you had been hurt. Thank you for building this life with me, for giving me children and grandchildren, for being my partner in all things. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Irving, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." They drifted off to sleep together, still holding hands, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and a love that had proven itself through 4 decades of daily kindness, patience, and unwavering commitment. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, constant and eternal, watching over the ranch and the town and the two people who had found each other when both needed it most, who had built something beautiful through the simple act of choosing love every single day, who had proven that kindness freely given could heal even the deepest wounds and create a love story for the ages.